First of all, thank you everybody for sticking around towards the end. I know that there's a happy hour after, and I am literally the last person on earth that will stand between anyone and a drink. So bear with me for only a couple of minutes. But I wanted to talk to everyone here a little bit about Baxus, what we're doing, and really to play a lot off of what Vishal was talking about why blockchain? Why take something like whiskey, something like tequila, rum, bourbon, and bring that on-chain and make that into something that, what does it do? Why bring it on-chain, which is always the first question that we're asked. And I think it really, this little sentence that we have over here is, I think, the biggest descriptor as to why we do this. How do you transform a passion into an asset class? So the first thing is about redefining what a collectibles market is. So I got into whiskey accidentally. I worked at an event, they gave us open bottles afterwards, and I went home and I felt the need to study everything it was. I thought it was all marketing, there was no difference, there was no nuance. And while I started to look into whiskey, what made whiskey unique, I realized that, most importantly, one, this is a very expensive hobby, and two, this is a really inefficiently expensive hobby. And what I mean by that was I could find a bottle for sale, I lived in New Jersey, and I could find a bottle for sale for $50, and if I went to a liquor store in Manhattan, that same bottle was $150. And so when you look at the sense of global distribution, you look at the way that things trade, you look at the way that people collect, what we realized was, in order to turn something that only the select few and the insiders really understand, you have to be able to provide access, transparency, and ultimately what that leads to is liquidity. So Baxus built an entirely vertically integrated solution for this, for the wine and spirits market. It starts with the vaulting. So you look at trading cards, they have PSA, and you get a nice little plastic slab and your card is up there and it's graded. And for the most part, you know that that card is authentic. You can go and send it to almost any eBay or any marketplace in the world. That doesn't exist in the worlds of wine and spirits, and there are books and movies if you guys want to see how multi-million, if not billion-dollar frauds have been committed with fraudulent bottles being rebranded and relabeled. So in order for us to create a trading platform, we need to establish trust. And that's what we've done. That we've taken all of these different elements of what these markets can play and brought them into one infrastructure. So I won't touch on this too long because Vishal really got into it this is the issue though with the market. It's fragmented, there's storage and liquidity constraints, settlement times, and the authenticity and price discovery. And to speak to a personal problem, the storage and liquidity constraints, I don't know how many people here actually live in Manhattan or live in an apartment. I used to, and it got to the point where my wife was like, okay, me or the bottles, you get to keep one because there's too much. And so thinking about how do you take something that I know has long-term value, that I know will appreciate in value, that I appreciate, and make it so that I can both maintain my ownership, prove I own it, have access to markets, but also keep my wife. So these were very, very important things. And so this is how we thought about it. And I say we because my co-founder who's here, Carrie, when we sat down and we were looking at this was back in 2021. So the innovation, the abstraction, the technology, where we got to wasn't there yet on blockchain. But we knew that building the infrastructure and the core pieces we needed to now, we're going to provide for a business that actually becomes scalable, that becomes venture backable, and ultimately becomes something that gives institutional exposure. This is the most important part, and this is I think the best way I can highlight why the significance and the importance of a BECM. Unless your name is Spencer Applebaum, it takes about 2 months to complete a transaction at Sotheby's. I say this because I'm pretty sure Spencer came with us to an auction last year, and I still don't think he's got his bottle. So we're going on a year or so. But beyond that, you have StockX, which takes about 2 weeks on average to settle a trade. And then on Baxus, you have about 2 minutes, and that can deal with network congestion, et cetera. Oftentimes, it's even faster. And the reason that's so significant is because there are days where we've had a bottle of whiskey trade 3 times in the same day. So somebody has purchased the bottle, it was listed at a price, they realized that they could market more, up to closer to value. Someone else came onto the marketplace and bought that bottle, and that bottle was then sold to a third customer who we assume came through the network of somebody's like, I know my friend is looking for this bottle. And he was able to do, and that took place all within the course of 1 day. That same transaction flow would have taken 6 months on Sotheby's for that bottle to trade. So when you think about the liquidity and the ability to build markets that can expand, that don't just capture a piece of the market, but actually grow the overall size of the market, instantaneous settlement is the critical piece that was missing up until now. And this has been the part that we at Baxus have really, really focused on. It's what we're calling actions to transactions. We started with the idea of it's not even a question of, oh, can your dad use the platform? My question is, can your grandfather use the platform? Can somebody because when you think about, old bottles of whiskey, most of them, and the ones that are really valuable now, they didn't start off as $1,000 bottles. They were $5, $6, $7 on the shelf, but that was 1956. And that same bottle now will sell for $5,000 because there are none left. Whiskey, wine, a couple of other things. What makes them so unique is that they're really deflationary. The utility is in actually opening the bottle and enjoying it with your friends. And so if you think about the fact that there's only 200 bottles that were released in a certain year, over time those bottles continue to deplete. And so being able to make it so that somebody who still has those bottles at home is able to get them to a market and to the new generation of collectors and to consumers was the most critical piece for us. And so it actually took a little while for the market to catch up with where we were, to be able to develop the abstraction so you can pay with a credit card while still having blockchain rails so that you could log in using an email or a social sign-on. So where we looked at this, when we look at how we built out Baxus, was where are the collectors? Because rather than targeting the initial crypto market and going after crypto users, there's a finite supply. There's only so many people who are sitting on the markets trading NFTs and trading meme coins. But when you look at the world of spirits and wine, it's a $2 trillion market. So there are clearly far more people that are sitting there buying a bottle of whiskey or buying a bottle of wine than there are trading a meme coin right now. And so how do you engage them? How do you make them feel like they're comfortable, that they're not trying to use magical internet money, that it's the same way that they're used to in the same process? And as a result, by integrating into a mobile-first app, which gives people the ability to track the bottles that they have on their bar at home, but more importantly, to track their intents, to see what bottles not just are on your bar, but what's on your wish list. What is it that you want to buy? Because the most efficient thing for any market, we have them for any trading, is order books, is the ability to see where people desire to buy a specific asset. And so that has become a massive unlock. So currently we have over 1.5 million bottles that are being tracked on people's bars or wish lists. So these are individual bottles that people are either have or are looking for. So when you talk about generating and finding supply for a market, we now have direct access into people's collections at home. When you talk about finding customers and consumers for the bottles, we know who's looking for them and the price they're willing to pay. We've garnered over 150,000 downloads of the app, and we have over 50,000 monthly active users. These are people who are logging onto this app and either buying a bottle, adding a bottle to their bar, keeping track of another bottle that they're looking for, and pretty soon a couple of other really cool features as well that we're bringing to them. But more importantly, what this has garnered is over $10 million of transaction value. So over $10 million worth of barrels and bottles have actually sold on our marketplace without anyone knowing that they're using crypto, unless they chose to connect their wallet and pay with crypto. And that has been a major unlock because we talk to a lot of people and they focus on, oh, it's amazing, we're in a bull market now, the bear market is over. And that's fantastic if you're a crypto user, if you're looking, but a whiskey drinker is buying a bottle whether the market's up or the market's down. The question is if he's buying a $200 bottle or if he's buying a $20 bottle. But they're still looking for a way to buy. They're looking for access. And when it comes to, again, really finite and deflationary things such as whiskey and wine, connecting the owners to the buyers is the critical piece that is missing across every single market, whether it's an eBay, a StockX, a Sotheby's. They spend so much money on advertising to try and put these bottles in front of other people. And what we've been able to do is to do that directly through the platform. So how do you put the collector network to work? How do you take it so that all of these collectors out there, the people who have these bottles at home, are able to reach the buyers that are looking for them? So we did this with Campari, with a brand on Wild Turkey. And so we ran an experiment on Halloween. We have in our system, we had this Russell's Reserve 13, which is a limited edition bottle that they release every year, that has a retail price of $150 and a secondary market value of about $350 to $400. We told Campari, instead of spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and run Instagram ads, well, you can't actually. That's the other issue. Instagram won't let you run an alcohol ad. So instead of trying to run an ad on the side of a bus, or to try and do a Skywriter, or to try and pay one of these other third-party network companies for an engagement ad, we said, why don't we go to the wish lists of the users on our platform and say, who actually wants this bottle? And sure enough, there were 1,200 people who had this bottle on their wish list. We had 50 of them that we made available. And within 3 minutes, all 50 of those bottles sold out, and there were hundreds of other people that had pinged the site trying to get in. The immediate response to this was twofold. One was the collectors realized immediately the value of adding something to their wish list because they understood that their wish list now was not just it's a list for me to look at. It becomes a list that they can share. It becomes a list that other people can look at. And so now we've made it so not just other collectors can engage and say, hey, I have that bottle. I want that bottle. What they're able to do now is go, and a brand can say, I want that user. I want that customer. Because if you think about your typical process, if you guys buy wine or you buy whiskey, you go into your liquor store, you buy your bottle, you go home. Maybe the liquor store has a CRM where they know who you are, so they could send you an update if the bottle goes on sale. But the distributor doesn't know who you are. The manufacturer doesn't know who you are. The distiller doesn't know who you are. The head of marketing and engagement, none of them actually know their customers in the way that Nike knows who's buying their limited edition sneakers. And so this gives both brands and consumers a way to engage directly with each other. And the same thing that happens over there was most of these bottles were immediately redeemed. So we now know that there's 35, 40 fewer bottles in the market because they went home, added to their app, and they opened them. But some of the other users immediately went and relisted those bottles on the marketplace, and they got snatched up. Because what we were able to do by building a market that can continuously flow is reduce our overhead costs. And by reducing our overhead costs, we cut the transaction fees. So the transaction fees turn from a value extraction into a value add. And that means that, again, you're going to see far more velocity of trading, which goes and takes it from something that might do $30 billion a year of secondary market value to something that can do $300 billion a year, because each bottle can trade infinitely more times in that speed. So we started with the whiskey market. We targeted them first. They're our core audience. We figured we're not going to try and convince crypto people to buy whiskey, and we're not going to try and convince whiskey people to buy crypto. We're going to sell people what they want. So this was a fun one. Lehman Brothers, pretty famous bank, went bankrupt. Lehman Brothers whiskey, not so famous whiskey, also went bankrupt. So if you're starting a business, I highly advise against using the name Lehman Brothers. Anyway, these bottles, this one-time run that they produced, ended up sitting in a warehouse somewhere for years, because the company went bankrupt, there was no one to sell it to, and a collector bought them all, and he's like, hey, I have these bottles, what can we do with them? So at the time, Baxus was able to leverage at what was the latest Solana primitive, this idea of a blink, the idea of making an instantaneous transaction directly within a Twitter feed. And within 24 hours, we sold over 300 bottles, had over 500,000 engagements, impressions, 15,000 engagements, and generated over $65,000 worth of sales for a bottle and a brand that nobody knew existed. Primarily because in crypto, Lehman Brothers is a meme. It's, that the collapse was what helped launch Bitcoin and everything around it. So we realized that, okay, let's try and test it this way. And what we found was not that this was a one-time they came, they bought, and they left, but what we uncovered was two types of collectors. One, the crypto collector who's actually also a passionate whiskey fan, and two, the crypto collector who isn't a passionate whiskey fan but understands the stability of the value and is now looking to actually purchase these assets. And the reason I emphasize that, because Michelle pulled up Loop Scale. So right now, with the assets that we have in our vault, and between the vaults and the barrels of whiskey and the bottles of whiskey sitting in warehouses, we've already originated over $2 million worth of loans. These are whiskey-backed loans. These are people who are lending other people money backed by whiskey bottles and barrels that are stored inside of our vaults or government warehouses. And the reason for this is the lender is the end consumer. If I'm a collector of whiskey and you tell me I can make 12%, 13, 14% on a loan at 50 cents on the dollar for a bottle, it's the only loan I have ever issued that I really hope the person defaults on, because I'm buying this bottle now for 50 cents on the dollar. And so creating these more capital-efficient markets scales up not just to the at-home collector, but to where we're going next year, and really where our big unlock is. And this is what brings on the institutionalization. So we've developed, sharing this a little early with you guys, a little just bit of alpha, but we've developed a technology in partnership with Helium that allows for us to track the location, temperature, and humidity, not just of the bottles in our vault, but of every single barrel of whiskey that a distillery has aging. And what that enables them to do is to actually tokenize their entire inventory. So we have an LOI that we've already signed with one of the largest warehouse manufacturers in Kentucky, who builds the whiskey warehouses for these brands. And next year, using the technology, which we will announce the name later, they are planning on tokenizing next year about $600 million worth of barrels of whiskey. That $600 million of assets is now being brought into a new market. It is now being brought directly to crypto. Those distilleries, those brand owners can not only sell them directly to brands and consumers without having to deal with paperwork. It takes 3.5 weeks to complete a cask sale in Scotland, because you have to literally sign and mail paperwork. But they're now able to actually access capital to run their distilleries and run their businesses against those barrels. And so this is where it gets really exciting, because collector markets are great, but what does TAM expansionary mean? It means that we're not just looking right now at who are the whiskey collectors of today. We're not even just looking at who are the whiskey collectors and enthusiasts of tomorrow, but we're looking at who are the institutions, who are the investors that are looking for new access to asset classes that previously they would never have before. Pretty soon, in about a month, we have our first institutional fund that is actually launching on Baxus to specifically trade bottles and barrels. They're going to be able to market make whiskey in a way that is completely compliant, where they don't have to custody them, they don't have to worry about the authenticity, and they don't have to worry about, did I pay the right price? Because all of that is made available to them. So what we're looking at and what we're doing at Baxus is not just how do we capture the existing market, but how do we take something that I fell in love with and so many other people have from a just pure understanding of the history and the nuance and turn it into something where you might be getting an offering from a wealth management fund in 5 years for a whiskey-backed bond or for some sort of income-driven product because they now have access to billions and billions of dollars of new assets they're able to rehypothecate. So like I said, I don't want to keep anyone from drinking, so I really appreciate the time. But if anyone has any questions on what they should be drinking or any questions about what we're building at Baxus, please come see me or Carrie, my co-founder. She's over there, and we're happy to talk about it. And thank you.